Hi guys. So this will be my last video. It is a year since I started chemotherapy. And I think it is pretty much a good wrap up for the end of that part of my journey. Um, and I thought about how I would do this video over and over again, and I really couldn't come up with a way that I could probably wing or speak about chemotherapy without writing it. I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker. So I'm going to read you what I wrote and I'll put it on my Caring Bridge for anybody that cares to read that. I'm happy to send you the link to that. But I apologize for reading what I wrote. It's just easier for me. So I'm going to go ahead and read that to you guys. And apologies if I skip a beat or something. It's sometimes hard for me to read what I'm writing just because of chemotherapy side effects. Anyways, here we go. 10/30/20. On the 1-year anniversary of my chemo. I've written and rewritten and edited and read and overthought what I'd write on this day. I think the ultimate problem is I don't know to whom I'm addressing. I cannot describe to those who have never been through chemotherapy the only word I could use to properly describe it: horror. And to those of us who have been through it, I do not need to describe nor make you relive what we all know has occurred to us. Today it has been exactly 1 year and 30 days since I heard the words breast cancer uttered in reference to my 39-year-old body. By this time last year, I sat in a reclining pleather hospital chair, with morphine running through the not fully healed port on my chest, as I received my first dose of Taxotere and carboplatin and Herceptin and Perjeta. My head was kind enough to relax and forget the sub-zero ice cap on it that would only preserve 10% of my hair when all was said and done, and that was the least of my long-term side effects. My brain was thoughtful enough to erase those words written in my charts and spoken over and over to me that month before, for just a few hours at least, that I was stage 4 de novo, with only a 2% chance of having this chemo rid my body of those tumors in my breast and my lymph nodes and my liver. And thank heavens for that peace for the chemo, for even if I won that chemo lottery, I'd still be on some of these drugs in that chemo pack, the immunotherapy ones, for the rest of my life, or until they stop working. I still would never be cured. Just no evidence of active disease until this cancer made its way into my body again. Today, it's been exactly 1 year and 30 days since that clogged milk duct wasn't a clogged milk duct at all, but rather a 5-centimeter invasive ductal carcinoma tumor spreading from my milk duct with a HER2+ charge that would never, ever be cured. And today, exactly 1 year ago, I last felt my 6-month-old baby drink from my breast for the very last time, and not by choice. There at chemo, I sat for my breast pump, beginning the weaning process months earlier than I had ever planned, crying that the cancer had pulled my rainbow baby off my breast. Sometimes throughout this year, on online support groups for metastatic and stage 4 breast cancer, I'll see people asking if we're really survivors. I'll mute those conversations and I'll hide them from otherwise helpful discussions. It's been one heck of a year for me. I was first diagnosed as oligometastatic, then misdiagnosed as having far more tumors in my liver than I had, and finally re-diagnosed by a fantastic oncologist as having most likely always been oligometastatic once again just recently. I've got a mastectomy in a month, radiation and reconstructive surgery coming up, and immunotherapy currently every 3 weeks until that stops working. Some days it's hard to believe the journey is my own. For every holiday and child's birthday I'm here to greet, I go as overboard as possible to make it memorable. My camera never stops taking photos, my journals never stop being filled with stories from my daughters, and my estate plan, family trust, and will have been recently detailed and updated as if there's no tomorrow. If I make it 5 years, I'll still celebrate graciously. As for chemo, it's funny how much haunts me and yet how little I remember or choose to remember. We recently sold our house for a variety of reasons, but one of the main ones was that I cannot sleep in the master bedroom anymore. In that room, in that bed, looking out those windows, I asked God to take me more than once. I lost 25 pounds in 2 months and almost couldn't continue my 5th and 6th rounds of chemo. Locked away from my oldest daughter, I hid in the bathroom with a blanket and pillow on the floor. I still tremble at the memories of hearing her cry, "Mommy, Mommy," at the door, as I threw my third prescribed anti-nausea pill. I recall the tears and heartbreak of begging my mother to bring me my baby in the bed while I was still weaning off feeding her, using the pump only to have to recognize the cruelty to her as she went to grab for my breast. And I think back to the moment I looked down after my 4th chemo to see my entire drain clogged with hair. Without any idea what to do with it, I let it dry, grabbed a Ziploc bag, and started to collect it. By the end of those 21 days, before I was put on an indefinite break because of my health, the bag was almost full, with instructions to please send the hair away to a company that can turn it into diamond for the girls. I was certain I was dying. I remember a lot of moments of failure for my oldest daughter that brought me to tears. Failure to take her to Peppa Pig live like I planned and asking a close friend to take her instead. Making it to her dance recital 3 days after chemo and helping her change behind the stage, but rushing home and locking the bedroom door immediately after so I could alternate between throwing up and sleeping for the rest of the day. Missing parties and activities and my promise to take her to Disneyland as soon as I was better, but having COVID hit right at that moment in March. I regret the scars she is left with as a result of the chemo, the panic of locked bedroom or bathroom doors, the scare over me going to the doctor whenever she sees my port, and any conversations about death. As for my baby, days turned to weeks and weeks turned to months where I couldn't be the one to bathe her or rock her or feed her. Her cries were not met by me. Her infancy was not enjoyed and cherished as I had prayed so hard to receive. She was not an instant pregnancy. She was a rainbow baby, and the results of visits to fertility clinics, nightly prayers, and more coin tosses and candle wishes than I could count. Greater than the poor vision, hand and foot syndrome, night terrors, stomach issues, and every other side effect that likely will never resolve from the chemo and continued immunotherapy. To lose so much of time with both of my daughters, knowing that time is not on my side, might be the greatest lingering pain of chemo. Some days, even now, I find myself alone crying so hard and wondering if living life with terminal illness and memories of chemo, knowing it likely won't ever be my last round of chemo, are better than sudden death. Particularly, I wonder if it's harder on my children and my parents and my family watching me go through this all. I cannot tell you for certain that I know the answer to this question. I have been told that it is the Samantha Show recently by someone I once held dear, and I have no response. It is, and I'm sorry. In cancer, there is no other way it can be often. Chemo in particular, something you'll never be able to explain the pain to someone else, may just not be worth it when it truly hurts those around you as much as it damages you. Maybe I've changed as a person because of chemo. The COVID test certainly did not bother me, and my prescription lidocaine numbing cream for my port access is completely unopened. Pain definitely becomes relative once you've been through chemo, whereas sorrow becomes a much more devastating and grander emotion. Friendships become less precious and fewer. I see support as something that is the most important thing I can give and receive, but also something that I know not everyone is capable of sharing with me. Maybe I've just started needing people more. Today, 1 year ago, I saw someone ring the bell after chemo and thought to myself, I'd never get to do that. When it was my time, I did it feeling silly, without really much of a picture. It was the end of only one small part of a lifetime journey, and I was due back for Herceptin and Perjeta 3 weeks later. I wish I had honored that woman's journey that day and my own in March. I wish I had honored that chemo, no matter what. I overcame quite a lot, and I deserve to ring that bell. Chemo, no matter the experience anyone has with it, is nothing that anyone can explain to another in words. It impacts the patient and their family, friends, children, and more. Today, 1 year ago, I faced the worst thing I have ever faced in my life. It brought me literally to my knees, to speak to God over and over again and ask Him for salvation. I prayed for my children, for my life, for my existence, and somehow I made it out to the other side. If I make it another day or week or year or 10 years, all I do know is that anyone, man, woman, child, or animal, who has been through chemo, whatever your outcome ended up, you are a survivor. I am a survivor.